conversation. It's the conversation. Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Let's go. Let's go. No filter, no restrictions. You about to get my opinion in its purest form. So my words, don't try to spin them. What I said is what I said, and what I said I meant it. The gloves are off now when I'm coming out swinging. So engage in verbal combat, but you better be ready. Cause this here for me is light work, even if the topic's heavy. I'm ready for it all with no running from nothing. You just take the time to digest what I put in, no rushing. But time is moving, don't waste it. You want the real, come and face it. Come sit and talk to me if you want it straight without a chaser. And it might burn a little when you step on up to taste it, but it's nothing harsh, I promise. Just a little conversation.
Well, everybody, welcome back to the conversation with Harold, and we also have, Dave, because we have to, right? No, I'm just kidding. Welcome back to the conversation with Harold and Dave. Before we get into our heavy topics, we're going to start off with the segment that we meant to end on our last show called "What the Hell Are They Talking About?"
What the hell are they talking about? 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 Hell are they talking about?
What the hell are they talking about? So on YouTube, I saw two very interesting things, and I didn't have time to snapshot it and put it on, but it had one of those polls that said, out of your last four first ladies, who was your favorite? Who do you think overwhelmingly won?
I mean, I can only say what I would have chosen, probably Michelle Obama, but
That's who you would have
that's
chosen.
just
But who
me.
do you think won?
I have no idea.
So we've
Well,
got Laura Bush,
Laura
Michelle
Bush.
four.
Obama.
Let's have the four.
Yeah.
They're Jill
Uh-huh. Jill
Biden,
Biden.
Melania Trump,
Mm-hmm. Michelle
Michelle
Obama
Obama, and
and
that
Laura Bush.
what?
I was going to get Laura Bush.
Laura Bush.
Laura Bush. All right, we're going back to we're including Laura in the mix.
Yeah, that's the last four. Because Obama did two terms, so we're
I
not
lost
counting
count.
Michelle
I lost
twice.
count in the middle
Yeah.
of it. That's why I had to ask. I was like, wait,
So,
how far back are we going?
So
so
who do
who
you
won?
think
And going back
over
to Barbara Bush, I don't really care. You
Oh,
know,
wow.
I didn't say who do you think won. Who do you think overwhelmingly won?
And
it's
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you told me Melania Trump, but I would say Laura Bush.
Dave?
Jill Biden, just to be contrary, because
It
everyone has a big
was
selfie.
Melania Trump by 85% of the vote. And so I was tickled to see what people were saying. So, of course, you go down to the comment section because that's the best section, right? And so for Michelle, it was the very lowbrow humor of you spelled Michael wrong. There's only three first ladies on there. The other one's a man. It was all these man jokes for some reason. And then for Melania, which I have no problem with Melania, but it was all of these. It was so great to have a real first lady in office. She's the only person that's ever acted like a first lady. She didn't say anything. And I'm like, well, that's definitely a guy making that comment.
No, she did say something. She plagiarized it.
No, I'm just saying she wasn't, she
I'm just
wasn't
saying,
out there. No,
but she plagiarized it.
I got
Whatever she said, she plagiarized it. I'm
it.
sorry.
And
You
so
didn't hear
I
me.
was just looking at all of this in the comments of, we can't wait to have the Trumps back, a real president with a real first lady. And I'm just like, what is happening?
Well, that's a sample issue right there.
And
Yeah.
so the second
That,
one, there was a video about, of course, immigration that we've talked about here on a lot, and people are talking about what would make America better, getting rid of. Um, People were going back and forth over immigrants and their role in society, and someone said, "Well, um, all illegal immigrants are a detriment to society. They do nothing for the country." And I said, well, I grew up in a place that had legal immigrants, and I knew a lot of illegal immigrants. And you're painting the picture of every illegal immigrant as just some loser who's taking up space in America. And the response I got was, Hey, at Keone Productions, if America kicked out all illegal immigrants tomorrow, minimum wage would multiply by 3 times in 10 years. It's simply supply and demand. It would even trickle up to regular society and benefit the average person's salary as well. What the hell is he talking about?
Well, that's the biggest lie he's ever heard himself say to himself, whoever that was. Because at the end of the day, if you get rid of immigrants, period, whether you want to call them undocumented, whether you want to call them illegal, if you want to get rid of immigrants, period, our economy is going to get out of control. And it will no longer be affordable for some of the things that they're complaining about now, even having, as far as food and certain items. But the fact is, this country was built on the backs of immigrants at the end of the day, and as well as those that were humanly smuggled here. But that's a whole nother conversation.
The involuntary immigrants.
Yeah, that one. Those.
Yeah, and as a descendant of the first illegal immigrants, the Pilgrims, they had a charter to go to Virginia. They had no right. No, I'm totally serious. If you want to split hairs about legalities, my ancestors came over on the Mayflower, or some of them. I had others that came in, but they had a charter to go someplace else from the king, and they landed in Plymouth Colony, and they're like, well, it's too late here to go where we're supposed to go, so we're going to take over this land, right? And they do the Mayflower Compact, and so basically they're kind of like sovereign citizens. They forge documents saying we have a right to be here. Of course, they also forge documents that are the basis of governing by consent and develop, but it's always been this way. You bring the population in. But the other thing is, I don't know where I go with that throw off line about the illegal immigrants, but you've always had these waves of people coming in, and for a long time, there was this argument that, well, as long as you were expanding territory, America had an insatiable need for people. And then when the frontier closed, the argument in the 20th century was, well, now we need to balance our population. But honestly, at this point, when you look at populations in advanced economies, they are dangerously close to collapsing. And so we probably need immigration in a healthy quantity, probably in higher levels than we have it now, for just kind of keeping our demographics going so we don't end up facing a population collapse like China. And, so the thing is, versus, part of the reason that you have so many illegal immigrants is it's very hard for people to come in. We make it very, very difficult for people to come in. And we have bizarre reasons that you can marry into the country. You can sneak in and claim asylum, right? If you get here and can claim that you're being but we have these weird categories. We don't have a rational policy for it. And so then people complain when it looks wonky. And it's like, well, fix the system. But no mistake. We need a steady supply of people coming in, and we are lucky that we have people that want to come here.
Well, even the lowest, and we're not going to make it like every immigrant that comes in desires to clean toilets, right? But just looking at the lowest form of work, every generation we've had a sect of people that did a certain job, and then once you start getting better, start making more money, your kids start getting more educated, you weed out of that job because we had the issue of what were black people during the civil rights movement? What was one of their biggest jobs? Cleaning houses, chauffeuring, driving buses, etc. Well, as black people got more fortunate, they didn't want to clean toilets anymore. They realized we can do better. So then someone else has to take up that area. So growing up, I lived around a lot of Mexican people who did those type of jobs, but their kids don't do those jobs. And I'm just using that as an example. I'm not saying every immigrant comes in to clean houses and drive buses, but when When your family's life gets better, your goal and your target gets higher. So who's going to do it? And we're not at the age where the robots are doing it all for us. So until we get there, somebody has to do it, right?
Yeah.
And it's usually not that the generation that's coming in
Mm-hmm.
that begins to move up. It begins the next generation or their offspring that
Mm-hmm.
move up to those next level jobs and opportunities.
Which is every parent's goal is to want their kids to do better than what they did or what
Right.
they, right?
But that next generation also has a different skill set than the one coming in. Because remember, we started in the agricultural field and then we began to progressively move up, and then others that came in afterwards because they initially may not have had those other skills, they began there and then their offspring began to move up as well. So it's just a
You're,
progression that's typical.
you're right, but I'm more talking about the aspect of, let's say you're a carpenter and you're my dad, and you have two things that happen. You have the dad that wants you to go into carpentry, and you have the dad that says no, you're going to do better than this, you're going to do more, and they force you out of that arena. You know,
Yeah, and I agree.
they
No, I mean, that's the story. I mean, my one of my first classes in college was a sociology class in immigration, and they were like, "Yeah, this is the pattern." And except for the Cubans and Japanese, apparently they make it in one generation, but everyone else, I don't know why. Of course, that was '80s level data.
Hey, we're gonna
'80s.
leave Miami out of this, okay?
Well, they always said though that there were these two groups that just came in and for some reason, bam, but everyone else, the Irish are. This is the thing when we talk, we always forget the Irish are this class of people who come in and are very slow and are discriminated against and oppressed and they have a very hard time and they event and today it's like on St. Patrick's Day you're Irish, right? I mean
Yeah.
it's they and so that was always kind of the pattern that you have and people don't come in to take your jobs. We have minimum wages. That's one reason you have a minimum wage is to prevent discriminate. You say, okay, you can't go lower than this, and so
Mhm.
everyone has to get that. So people can't come in and they just agree to do the minimum wage jobs that are already there. And
Mhm.
so it's if you don't have enough people doing it, um, you know. The other thing that one little factoid is it is just people that come here from other countries being poor in the United States or a Western country, an OECD country, which includes Japan, not just Western countries, but the the standard of living of like the bottom 5% is better than the standard of living in in the lesser developed countries
Yeah.
of the fifth percentile, right from the top, or the 95th percentile, and so it's just a marked standard of difference that the people that come in and do these jobs, um, you know, a lot of Latin American workers that come into the country send a lot of their money home, and it's this thing of like, how do you live on the wages you're getting and still send money home? But for them it's this big advantage, and so it's that's why they come in. We get good people, right, that come in and because these are the people who get up and go and then are
Mhm.
sending money back, and eventually they're going to be really productive workers and good
Yeah.
members of the society. Why wouldn't you want these people?
Well, you get used to your standard in living. Like you just pointed out, what's poor here is not poor there. When you're poor here, you're poor by your standards. I remember, and I can't remember what Asian country my neighbor was from when I lived in Texas. And you know how we complain about housing today, where the yards are getting smaller and smaller, right? And he was amazed, like I got 3 feet between me and my and my neighbor where I'm from. The houses are all on top of each other. Like you've seen the countries where the houses are
Mhm.
just stacked on top of each other. And he's like, this is amazing. And I'm sitting here like, I need more yard, you know? So it's always relative to what you're used to. And you get accustomed to thinking what's poor in your place and not considering what's poor in another place. Um, another thing, another segment. I don't have imagery for it, but we're going to do a segment called "What's on Your Mind" because we always have topics. But you know what? Someone said you never asked them what's on their mind. So let's do the segment "What's on Your Mind."
Let's go.
Let's start with Harold. What's on your mind?
Well, I mean, it's quite a bit, but from the Caitlin Clark Olympic basketball team snub to, now the comments surrounding the Hunter Biden trial. And, I look at, going to the WNBA, which is something that we rarely would even talk about in this particular platform. It's interesting that the season just started and you're hearing it's the media has been fed with so much information as it relates to not just the treatment of one player by others in the league because they're competing against her, but also by her team. And I know that the media has given her and branded her really the golden child of the WNBA, and she has had a very successful college career. But I'm trying to understand if that's my teammate, regardless of whether I think she's as good as the media may say she is. I'm trying to understand why would I have any hatred towards someone or bitterness towards someone, or better yet, even jealousy towards someone who was there to help make my team and our team better. I'm just trying to understand that whole dynamic as it relates to it. And I realize, again, women are just as competitive as men, especially when you're talking about the WNBA. But in this particular case, I'm Team Caitlin in supporting what she's accomplished and what she potentially could do for the league. But I'm confused as to why others would stand in the way. But it does also compare to, and I made this comparison before, how Jordan was originally treated when he came into the league and how players wanted to isolate him and really, try to prove that he wasn't as good as the media said he was.
It's two things because I've switched on my thoughts on Caitlin because when I saw other teams doing it, which the stuff that's non-basketball related after the play is kind of horrible, but I'm like, you know what? Male superstars went through this. Jordan went through that. Who's this Jordan guy? Magic and Bird are still in the league. Let's show you who you are. And he got it rough for 7 years, right? We forget
Right.
Jordan for 7 years got bounced, right? But where I flip to where you are is it's coming from the teammates too. That's where I'm a little confused. And now I liken her to the Tiger Woods issue when Tiger Woods first came, right? When there would be comments made about him or snide remarks and interview questions being given to golfers that were never given before. And I cannot remember the South African golfer. Is it Gary Player? I can't remember. He's very funny. I'm losing it in my mind. But they asked him, about issues with Tiger Woods, and he's like, I don't understand why everybody has issues. This is in the early Tiger days. I don't
Mhm.
understand why everybody has issues with Tiger Woods and making stupid comments. The tournament we just played in paid $80,000 before Tiger Woods came. Now it pays $1.2 million. Why would I have a problem with Tiger Woods? And
He
it's
only
still
made it better.
more people
Right.
are talking about the WNBA that have ever talked about it in any instance of the WNBA, and they're not capitalizing on it because the NBA had to do that. The NBA was tape delayed. The finals used to be tape delayed until Bird and
Yep.
Magic, and then they
Yep.
capitalized on that. So that's what I
Exactly.
think they're missing. They're missing that window of capitalization if they don't correct what's happening.
Right. Now, I do know. Oh, I'm sorry, Dave, you want to chime in or are you good?
I don't follow hockey, so I don't know.
Go Panthers. Go Panthers.
Well, the Panthers
Uh,
are the Stanley Cup Finals, Dave.
yes.
You don't
Yes, they are.
hockey.
But no,
Uh,
I mean, the other piece of it is for me.
well, hold on a second, because Dave, you don't follow basketball, but I know you get the concept of what we're talking about. In summary,
Yes, and
you
and
know,
I'm Team Caitlin,
so
and
we're talking about
uh,
people.
it,
Why are people
Hockey.
reacting?
yeah, I tried to get out of it, but I wonder how much of this is. I mean, I think we're playing into
Uh-oh, he froze. I,
Yeah, see, he froze.
what I was saying
Yeah,
was I liken it more to Tiger Woods than Michael Jordan because the NBA was already a hot commodity because of Bird and Magic before Michael got there. The reason why I parallel it to Tiger Woods is because most people weren't talking about golf except for people who liked golf until Tiger Woods came. And that upset a lot of people. They're like, hey, we've been here. We've been here all along. Now you want to talk about golf. So the WNBA is the same thing. It's had these
Exactly.
stars that no one's talked about in mass. And now it's like, wait a minute, now you want to talk about it? That's why I liken it more to Tiger Woods than I do Jordan, because you have those people going, the I don't, whether it's envy, jealousy, so whatever you want to call it, of hey, we've been here. Now you want to talk about us?
I
right.
think
But
that
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just popped back in. Excuse me, Starlink come in. But I think that that was my thought too. That I think that's a good analogy. That there's a thing where hey, they've been working, doing this thing, and then somebody comes in suddenly, and they're all supposed to be really happy about it, and they're like, "Well, where were you when we were sucking up and doing it?" And I think that's natural, and
Hmm.
I think like I say, I think sometimes the attention we're giving this plays into a unfortunate idea that women are maybe more catty, and that I think there's a level where I worry about that. Um, but I think at another level too, I also say, yeah, is Caitlin Clark? I'm very supportive of her, and I really wish she was getting better treatment. But Jackie Robinson, just gonna go here and
Go there.
say, I mean, can we? She's not even, and she would probably be the first to say, "Oh yeah, I'm not even anywhere near that." And although I don't know that that should mean so much. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Sorry.
Well, people will always bring that up too, Dave. Like that's why it's so easy for people to go, "Oh my God, LeBron, quit crying about how hard your life is in dealing with the NBA and critics. Do you know what Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had to deal with? Do you know what Bill Russell had to deal with while they were playing? Plus, you know what they were making. Uh, when you've had players that have to have a full time job because the professional career that they have doesn't pay enough during the season, it's a different ballgame. But everyone's going to have their struggles. So that's what's on Harold's mind. What's on your mind, Dave?
Well, we're going to talk about Ukraine, right? So
Yeah.
that's been more. If it's not Maine and the stuff I'm doing, I'm looking out the lake, and I've been
Mhm.
doing stuff here, so I'm kind of checked out of the world. Except now and then I do a TikTok on Ukraine and Russia, and the ships going. Okay,
He's
okay,
checked out and he's in Maine. That sounds like white people problems.
yeah, okay. Um,
Yeah, okay.
it took generations of oppression of other people for my ancestors to get me here. I don't
Yeah,
think you understand how much
yeah, you
work
are
that
Irish. I,
is.
I, I
Okay,
do
I mean, damn
understand.
it.
But,
You don't understand the struggle.
the
The
Irish
struggle is
didn't have it.
real, John.
The Irish didn't have it so great.
But we are all digressing now. No, these ships going to Russia. I'm just so amused by they're sending this ship, this Russian ship, and I don't even care to learn the name of the damn thing. It's a frigate, right? And it's a class of ship that the United States did away with because we thought it was too small for fleet operations, and so
Mhm.
we thought it was rather inconsequential. So
It's
Uh-oh.
inconsequential. I
He
don't know the
froze again.
name of the ship. He's off in the never regions of the world, so he's gonna freeze sometimes. Uh,
He popped back up. Boom.
One of the things that we'll get back to him when he pops back in. One of the things you were talking about that was on your mind, you mentioned Hunter Biden.
Uh-huh.
Um, what's on your mind about what's going on with that?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's taken on a different viewpoint considering whose son it is.
All right, we're gonna put a pin in that. Dave's
Oh,
back. All right, Dave.
hey,
So the ships that are deemed
Wakanda forever.
inconsequential. Wait, is he
no, we
frozen?
don't.
Oh no, we can hear him though. There he is. All right, the
There we
ships.
go.
that are thought to be inconsequential. That's where we left off.
But so, I mean, the Russians are sending a frigate, right? It's
Mhm.
this tiny little ship, and they send a oiler along to refuel it, and a salvage tug, because if any of this crap breaks down, they have to drag it all the way back to, like, the Baltic,
Oh,
or
wow.
around, and and then they have a submarine. The submarines are supposed to go off alone, and not and and they're all making, ooh, oh my God, these ships are coming. Meanwhile, they're being bird dogged by ships. Our destroyers, Arleigh Burke destroyers, are all twice as big as this frigate. So we've got two of these things following it, right? And I kind of say this is like somebody decided to intimidate you by walking their 50-pound pit bull in your neighborhood. And you've
Whoa.
gone out with two 90-pound Rottweilers and are walking behind them like doop, 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 because you didn't feel like bringing your lion on the plane after, because that's what we've got in aircraft carriers. And did you know that a Marine Corps, or the Marine and Navy, the helicopter, the landing ships, the assault landing ships with the helicopter carriers, one of them with a Marine Corps squadron of F-35s embarked, has more fifth generation aircraft than Russia, than the country of Russia. And this is our helicopter carrier. Okay,
Huh?
this is not our lion. This is our tiger, right? And it's amazing. So the power inequities are just ridiculous, and everyone's talking about this. And the problem is that Putin is getting away with being able to
Can't
pose
use.
as if he's comparable and as if he's a
I
balance
can't use.
to the U.S. when he really isn't.
Sorry. Oh, Harold, I had to mute you, but you can go ahead and mute yourself. You know, I don't have, because I didn't pull it up, but I remember watching a YouTube video and talking about the amount of money that the United States spends on military defense is enough to cover like 20 countries' GDP. you know, and it was actually more than that. I just can't remember. It was like it's so we better. I mean, it's insane.
It's
It's insane
insane.
in a good way. Uh,
But it is problematic when we lose sight of the actual power, and we play into Putin's perception of power game, his perception games. And so I just laugh at these ships, and I think we should all be laughing at them as a pathetic show of force that shows that it's a show of strength that shows weakness.
is he procrastinating to this election?
Putin? Oh, I mean, I'm sure he's waiting on it. I don't know that he's got to figure at least a 50-50 chance that Trump gets in,
Mhm.
and that would be great for him.
But
That
gets in the
would
presidency or
allow him to
gets in
do a lot.
jail? Which one?
Hmm?
50-50 chance of him getting in jail or getting into the presidency?
Well, I think 50% one way, 50% the other.
All right, Harold, let's go back to your thoughts on that you were having with Hunter Biden.
Well, no, it's. I see how initially the threats were. Well, listen, it's a two-tier justice system. He's not going to get convicted. He's not going to get this. He's not going to get that. And immediately after the conviction, now it became, well, it's definitely he's not going to get this. He's the president's son. The president's interfering with this, that, or the other. And I'm saying to myself, okay, he's been convicted under the same Department of Justice that levied certain charges against the president. Some were state, some were federal. But had his last name not been Biden, would this whole firearm application issue been a part of the media cycle? And as I've heard from those that are in that operate in that sphere, so to speak. There's a lot of that. That's rampant. That happens all the time, where all of a sudden you find out a person that's been convicted of a crime, a felony, or whatever, lied on an application, obtained a firearm, and now they've violated the law, but yet and still they were not brought to the same level of justice and or scrutiny that Mr. Biden or Hunter had been brought to.
Well, playing devil's advocate, people like to say, well, if you're in a certain stratosphere, you're supposed to have a greater level of accountability or responsibility. I don't know how you want to take that. I definitely agree again, but that's been the thing with the justice system always. Your name and what you are in society plays a role in the coverage or the outcome sometimes. So, I mean, I really don't know what to say. It's a shame, but
Mhm.
it happens to everyday people. You know, we
No,
just don't. If it happens to me, of course, like what you're saying, if it happens to me, I don't get the news coverage, right? I'm not going to be in the
but
news.
most likely it won't happen to you because you're not a significant personality to draw
Hey,
attention to.
hey, now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You are YouTube famous. My
Thank
bad.
you. Thank you.
Uh,
And this is coming from
I'm
my
sorry.
uncle. Remember, we're related
YouTube
people.
famous.
Wow. Let's just go on the day. That's a low blow, Uncle.
When it comes to
Right
Hunter
after my
Biden,
birthday.
So
Not only not only did I not get a happy birthday from my uncle, I get told I'm not significant. Unbelievable.
wow.
yeah,
These
I
people are
don't
looking for stones to throw around here. You got to find another uncle. I think
He's
that's
got
what's going
that
to happen.
perfect. No, the slim picking, so we're not going to get into that on this YouTube. I told you you're my favorite uncle, but we also consider the competition.
Hey, I'll take what I can get.
I'll just say when it comes to Hunter Biden,
Mhm,
if the problem is that the standards are being more strictly applied to a person of prominence,
mhm,
I'm on board with that. I love that. I think that's awesome. It's when people get away with stuff, you know, when I see that DA not getting frog walked to jail after, you know, just, uh, when the cops pulled her over and, later on she had to eat some crow, but I'm just like, hey, look, you're trying to not, you're trying to use your position to get a lower treatment, right? And
mhm.
that's reprehensible. But if we're saying, well, Hunter Biden did something that most people would get away with, but because he's the president's son, he didn't. Cool. Good. I love it. Because holding people to a higher standard, because in the end, you have to have a jury had to convict him. The jury had to go in. He had his day in court. And was he guilty of the crime? He wasn't railroaded. He was just prosecutorial discretion was used because of his prominence to avoid an appearance of impropriety. I'm all good with that. I think that's actually how it should work. I would love a world where, yeah, if you have power, you have to play by the rules more strictly than everyone else. I don't think we don't live in that world. It's not consistent, but when it occurs, I'm like, so yeah, I got nothing against Hunter Biden personally, but I don't have a problem with him being, because of his name being held to a more strict standard, as long as it's a legal standard, and it's a jury. He had all the benefits of a jury, and et cetera, et cetera.
Well, no, and I agree with you 100%. I'm not saying that he should not be held accountable. What I'm saying is, had it not been for the 45th president being held accountable,
Right?
then this would be a nothing burger.
Yeah.
This would not even be even looked at or scrutinized because, as they said, this happened in 2018. Who was president in 2018? That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
So we want to go back and try to create this whole idea of unfairness with our judicial system in one regard, but not in both. So that my point here is if the 45th president had not been charged and convicted, this whole thing with Hunter Biden, obviously his Department of Justice didn't see any significance in it at that time. And we're just talking about the application aspect. And thank God he did not use a weapon to commit any crime or do anything to harm someone else. But at the end of the day, just looking at how the two worlds are operating, this is why I feel not so much that it's an injustice, is that it would not have been even pursued, or it wasn't even pursued prior to now. And it's only pursued now because of what's transpired with our 45th president. That's it. I'm done. I'm landing my plane.
I haven't heard the land the plane one in so long. I forgot that was your catchphrase. Um, do
I've
you
been
guys,
trying to turn it around to get them started. Like, okay, take your plane off.
do you
Cleared for
remember
takeoff, Harold.
now?
I don't know.
You're both educated, so you're going to have to break down this internet response for me because I am not smart enough to know what this guy is saying. We
Oh,
did a
Jesus.
video a while ago about when you look at the political maps of the country, even when a state is red or blue, when you zoom in with your little fingers, you'll see that the cities tend to be bluer. And as you get further away from the cities, they get red. Dave gave his explanation of
Okay.
why, and Harold and I. So David Philopot, which is not David who's on the show. It's another
Okay.
David.
Thank you for clarifying.
There are a lot of Davids out there.
There's even one that fought Goliath. So someone said that us saying that was very stereotypical. And we're trying to paint the picture that urban people are not intelligent as people who live in a city. And Dave Philipott responds to both of us and says, it's not a stereotype. Self reliance and accountability are hallmarks of rural existence. Living in a city is neither blending into the crowd, mob allows to be anonymous. Manipulative puppet masters provoke the coalescence of nebulous, yeah, people love big words,
Nebulous.
Nebulous.
nebulous issues of emotionally charged content that lead people into states of mind and attitudes that are best artificial, contrived and ultimately subjective and arbitrary. Living close to and in nature liberates people from the aforementioned and clarified objectivity, simplifies what is otherwise unnecessarily made complicated and ambiguous.
That assumes, all right, so what this guy is saying in, if I break it down Barney style, um, he's saying that people that live in the city can be, that they're puppet masters of the city that bombard them with a bunch of emotionally triggering and manipulative messages. And the people that live in the country, because they're closer to nature, are free of these overt social manipulations and therefore have a truer knowledge of the world. Um, and I'm like, or hear me out, you know, people that live in the country are isolated and do not have a diversity of viewpoints handed to them and are therefore more vulnerable, that when you live in a shack and don't have that much experience with the world, you are more open to manipulation. I also wonder if this person doesn't understand that people in cities and people in rural areas all have frickin' cell phones. They have, that the great leveler is, where do we think these messages that he's saying exist in the city come from? Do people walk outside and talk to someone on the street corner, or are they in their apartment on their iPhone? And people in the country are in their house or in their double wide, watching their iPhone. And so I think that this argument is very bad. I think it's an argument that is fallacious. It makes a lot of assumptions that I think we could criticize, although it is an argument. as far as what we said being a stereotype, I think we need to look up what the word means, and we also need to look at what we said. What we said was a statement of fact. Fact. You are drawing conclusions about what that means. This person is saying that because people are blue, they're dumb, right? I'm like, no, I don't see that being the case at all. It's there's a lot of things that could create. He's we don't know what the causality is. All we did is say, look, it's an observable fact. People in rural areas the rural areas tend to be red, and the word tend is the point. It's a trend. People in urban areas tend to be blue, and it's the suburbs that are getting more and more blue that is the problem. They used to be more red, now they're becoming more blue. These are just statements of objective fact. Sorry. I'll land my plane.
If everybody lands the plane, then we'll be able to take off again, right? I So here's the thing, because I'm gonna apologize. Well, not apologize. I'm gonna take back what I said. I can never tell when someone is making a point and trying to use, whether we want to call them big words or be overexpressive, if they're actually that smart or they're trying to sound smart. And sometimes when you break it down, you'll end up telling the person, you said a lot to say absolutely nothing. And that's what I felt like what happened. You said a lot to said absolutely nothing. You did the very thing that you're accusing the video of doing, is basically what you just said, right? It's funny how
I
that
get it.
happens.
But,
Well,
yeah.
because I've lived in the city and in the country. Dave, I think you have too as well, right?
Oh, I'm suburban.
Yeah.
As remember, I come from just a very, very red background.
I know.
You know, I mean, I
You've lived in North
Republican
Carolina. You've lived in some. I mean, Pinehurst and the Aberdeen area is not actually the booming city.
I live in Fayetteville now, but I grew up in Glen Ridge, New Jersey,
Mhm.
and I went to the city. uh,
And Harold, where'd you grow up?
In Goulds, Florida.
No, you said it wrong. That's how no one will consider you from there. It's pronounced Goose, Florida.
Exactly. Goulds, Florida.
Let me tell you something, Dave. So I grew up around the corner from Harold, and I grew up in a part of the town that was called the Village. Harold, you remember where the Village was, right?
Huh?
That's where all the bad stuff was. And so we moved around the corner, and for my entire life, that area was called New Homes. So when people ask you, where do you live? You say, I'm from the Village, I'm from Chocolate City, or I'm from New Homes. I didn't know until I was like 18 that the reason why it was called New Homes is because when they were built, there was a sign that said New Homes. So they named the neighborhood New Homes.
Hey, we're creative over here. What are you talking about? We're creative.
So,
I love
even
my city. What's the problem?
20 years after the homes have been in play, people said, where are you from in Goulds? You say New Homes.
Hey,
Funny. All right. Question from email. Are you guys going to be doing responses to the debates when they come up? I could see the excitement on your face.
I don't even know if I'm watching. I'm
But
sorry.
that's what I was going to say. If we do coverage of the debates, people, that means I would need to watch it from beginning to end. And uh, I don't
I'm
know
not
how
doing
much
that.
of a 2 hour Trump Biden debate I want to watch.
Yeah, because he's gonna be talking about electric something and sharks and all, boats. And I mean, I don't know what happened in that last rally that I went to, but I'm still trying to recover from that conversation.
here's the thing with that. I'm coming on 30 years of being a professor, and as a student of politics, I'm always trying to, there's watching the debate to decide who you're going to vote for, and then there's watching the debate to understand American politics. And I always said, I don't want to watch the debate because then I will form judgments about the candidates and what they said. What I want to do is watch the reaction to the debates because
Mm.
what is published in the papers, because I'm old, or talked about on the news because again I'm old, and what will be in TikToks because I'm not that old. The thing is though that what comes out later is what gets baked into the election. You know, very few people watch as a proportion of the electorate. Very few people actually watch the debate. So I used to always be like, all right, I don't want my own judgments of what actually happened to get in the way of the spin and my analysis of it. The problem with doing that with Trump is, and what I would do is I would read them later. I would read transcripts later and I would cover the material. But with Trump, when you read what he said, it's unintelligible. Like if I don't listen to it, I won't. It might as well be written in French. You know, I understand a few words, but I could never follow it. Right, and so this is my problem. Is I'm committed to doing these boring AF politics things.
Mm.
So I'm committed to analyzing this election in depth. I'm going to actually have to watch him because I won't understand what Trump says if I read the actual words he said. I'll have to get, the mood and his
Yeah,
inflection.
I get what you're
So I'm going to die. I'm going to be begging for the bullet. I'm going to be like, just shoot me now.
saying.
Wow.
Or maybe I'll talk to you guys about it after, so you don't have to, right? I'll watch the debate so you don't have to. I
So
don't
what's
know.
funny is because it's because my YouTube channel, I see all the comments, right? Or I get the emails. There's no the conversation email that YouTube get to check. And I wouldn't say a back and forth. I got into a discussion with the guy. These two guys, we got into an argument, and the guy said Trump could have beaten Obama. And the guy said Trump knew better not to run during Obama's second term. And he goes, "Why do you feel that?" And I said, "Listen, if Trump would have ran against Obama, it would have looked even worse than Mitt Romney." I said, the Trump, President Obama running against John McCain before Sarah Palin popped up was actually a pretty good debate, pretty good election to watch before the injection of Sarah Palin because you had two guys that disagreed with each other but respected each other, respected the politics and angles of each other. Mitt Romney came in there and tried to be that guy that would just say things, and Barack intelligently just embarrassed him at every debate and showed he knew nothing. When he would bring up things, he'd oh, this is the lowest amount of ships we've ever had in the Navy. What are you doing with our defense? He said, Governor, which he would always call him, which always made me laugh. He'd remind him that he's not president. He'd say, well, Governor, we're not playing battleships. And this isn't the 1800s. like,
Oh, oh,
I think Hillary's downfall was she played Donald Trump's game, which Obama wouldn't have done. And he would have made Donald Trump look like a complete idiot even more than
yep.
he does himself. Am I far off in saying that? I don't want to sound like a Donald Trump hater, but I just think that's how that would have went.
No, you're on point in my opinion, and the fact that Obama's total approach to the process made him seem more like an outsider coming in to try to straighten things. But then again, he hadn't been in there that long to, I would often say, allow any corruption or the corruption to take place. You just got in 2 years. What? I think he was senator for 2 years before he then ran for or got into the race to become president. And I think his approach was totally different, even from the standpoint of his whole campaign and how he ran and orchestrated his campaign. Think about it. He's the one that came up with utilizing social media. He's the one that came up with requesting or asking for $1, $3, and $5 donations because he figured that if I could get millions of people to give me $3 and $5, small denominations, I know I got their vote. Because wherever you put your money, that's where you're most likely going to put your vote. Whereas in the past, it's like, hey, we need $20, we need $50, we need $100, or we need you to come to this $500 plate dinner. And that's how fundraising had been done. So he created his own engine to propel him into the presidency, which was done unlike any previous candidate prior to him, moving into that position. So I think his strategy alone was just totally different. And he now then allowed them, or they quickly embraced that strategy so that they could try to have similar results, which didn't work. But, in that regard, however, it did allow the Republicans to try to create their own, which landed us into, I guess, more of a grifting mode now instead of an actual authentic campaign strategy that's being launched by them. But
I
that's
would have
my.
donated, I would have donated more, but he didn't take EBT back then.
Oh,
Hey, Dave, what do you have to say about the conversation I was just talking about
I
having?
it's illegal.
I think a couple things occur to me. One, it takes Obama being elected to spark the Tea Party. The way I see things with MAGA, right? Because Trump isn't a Republican; he's a MAGA, right? And the Republican Party has basically been overwhelmed by that movement, and I trace that back to the Tea Party. So it takes Obama being elected, and everyone's like, "Oh, all this stuff," and there's something about a black man being elected that just freaks people out, and I don't think it was just that, but I think that was the big thing. The world doesn't look like them. America doesn't look like these people, and I think it went beyond racism. It went to core identities with the country and what's going on. Because the defining quality of the Tea Party is they don't recognize the world they live in, and they're worried about the direction the country's going. And like I say, it also takes generational issues. They think the young people are slackers. There's a whole bunch of other stuff in there. That movement goes on. Romney is not the guy to own it, right? Romney is an establishment Republican. He flirted with it, but he was not good at doing, Trump is the candidate for that movement. Trump is the realization of everything these people want. Trump is the old white guy id, right? He says stuff without filter. And even people that were Republicans that didn't like him, like a guy I knew at the railroad who he was begging for Romney to come out. He would just be like, oh, I can't stand Trump, but he says what I'm thinking. And even my father, who hated Trump, said that. Sometimes he just says what I think. And that's where I think you get that marrying. And then there's the fact that Hillary Clinton was just a horrible candidate. She was, in terms of being for a lot of people on the right, she was just the worst thing they could imagine. So she triggered a lot of threat, a lot of hate, a lot of angst that even Obama didn't, and that helped Trump. And so I think Trump might have done better than Romney, but I don't think he would have won against Obama. He wouldn't have taken out a sitting president. He needed a weak candidate, and he needed that candidate that really polarized and played into the rhetoric, the social cultural warfare rhetoric, even more than Obama. Right? I think Hillary. They had just built up a lot of conspiracy theories around. I mean, she was just, public enemy number one, and so, I think a different candidate than Hillary probably would have won. And so, that's my thought. I don't know if that's right. That's just my thought.
No, I just think it was. Like I told you, I gave you the response of when my 14-year-old nephew at the time watched the debate. Remember, I told you his response, and he didn't know either of the candidates. He said the guy doesn't answer any questions, and the woman keeps sounding like she's saying, "I know you are, but what am I?" And that was his assessment of the presidential debate.
2016 debate.
So, all right, before we end the show, let's get into Dave. If he can stay on, let's get into Dave's Ukraine update.
Let's go.
journalist. What is it? He has the music. Five, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Well, hey there. Well, it's going again on my side. The video is playing again on my side.
It's yours. You're behind. Just keep going. It's
Okay,
perfect on YouTube.
dude. There we go. Thank you. That's an aggressive video to have in your face when you're trying to talk about Ukraine. But when we talk about aggression in Ukraine, what do we got going on? All right. Now we're seeing the American-made weapons are making it in. We are at the end of the shell shortage. The concerns that Ukraine had, Russia launched an attack from Belgorod, not Belgorod. Put that right into TikTok and got vilified for it today. But Belgorod, they were attacking in towards Kharkiv, and that didn't go very far, right? The Ukrainians shut that down, but that was Russia's last chance to either mount an offensive against Kharkiv or to pull Ukrainian forces out so they could continue making advances from Avdiivka, which is the one place they've had some success at. Well, the Ukrainians were able to bring in reserves, so they didn't have to pull as many troops out from Avdiivka to cover the extended fighting. And the weapons are coming in. And then we have this collective lifting of the restrictions on weapon use, right? Because the big thing is the Russians were attacking from Russia. They were coming over the Russian border that the Ukrainians were forbidden to shoot our really cool weapons over, right? So that they could hit logistics centers, air defense, and all that stuff that Russia had on its side of the border. Almost all the nations have taken that back, right? And so the Europeans, and then first the Europeans, then the United States said, "Oh, no weapons. Well, not weapons, but go for it, right? If you can identify a target that is threatening your country, please, by all means, blow it up." Which kind of, for the Russians, means that they don't have this safe sanctuary that they thought they'd have to launch this offensive. And so, in a way, the tables have kind of been turned, where the Russians extended the line, started attacking from the north, thinking, "Oh, that'll draw off Ukrainian sources, and the Ukrainians can't shoot back at us with these American weapons, so we're good." Now, well, no, that's not the case at all. So that's going on, and we're going to see. There's a concern that Russia would try to double down on this strategy and open up a front even further towards the west, and extend the line more. It seems unlikely now. We're also seeing the Ukrainians blowing the snot out of air defense, right? We're seeing a lot of attacks with ATACMS. Now they're getting our ATACMS, the long range version, and they haven't been cleared to use those in Russia. They're only allowed to use HIMARS because that's what got a more limited range. But in Crimea, they're able to use the ATACMS to range wherever they want. So they've attacked the ferry system that brings things into Crimea. That's parallel to the Kerch Bridge. Haven't attacked the Kerch Bridge because why? It doesn't work very well. And the Russians have kind of stopped moving stuff across it because they're worried about it being attacked. It's already been damaged. So now they're going for the ferries. They're going for the air defense. And it turns out that ATACMS really, really wipe out S-400 and S-300 missiles. They are able to go in and just devastate these missile sites. And I can't help but wonder if a lot of this isn't, we're seeing more and more of that. We're seeing attacks on logistics, but a lot of air defense attacks on Russian air defense by Ukraine, which might make sense. It might be anticipating the F-16s debuting, right? Because the Ukrainians are getting F-16s, and sometime this month, so in the next couple of weeks, we're going to hear about them coming out. So they may be whittling down the Russian air defense in anticipation of being able to use these things. And so their casualty rates keep going up, and with no end in sight. But for Ukraine, I think they are now coming out of their shell shortage and are stabilizing a lot. The question is, for Ukraine, the long-term problem they have is their manpower issues. They've kind of used up, or they've taken max advantage of all the people willing to volunteer, and they are now having to recruit. They're now having to conscript people and train new troops, and that is causing them some difficulties. So their shortage right now is actually people, but they're working on it because they're willing to conscript people to go fight. Uh, and Russia isn't. Russia, when they conscript someone, they promise not to send them to Ukraine, right? And so they have to lure people in and get them to volunteer for it. Whereas Ukraine's like, no, get a uniform and get out there and defend this place. So this is very reminiscent of like the Civil War, right? American Civil War, where we had this massive amount of volunteers on the American side, the United States of America, not that Confederate bullshit. Yeah, I said it. But they had a big changeover. At some point, they had to move to a conscription system. So I think Ukraine is at about that point right now. That's it.
Thank you, Dave, for your Ukraine update. Look, I learned more from listening to your Ukraine update than trying to scour the news, putting the pieces together.
I just hope I'm right.
uh,
I just hope I'm right. You know.
well, hey,
Uh,
you can remember when we first talked about it during the first offensive, and we were like, "Whew, how long is this going to take?"
Mhm.
And you had a lot of people saying this is going to be swift and fast, and
yeah.
here we are. You were one of the ones that said it will not be, and you're right.
Not at the very beginning. It took me a while, but I started seeing it, and that's where the theory and the research in political science comes up, because you get this thing like, hey, democracies do well, and that research and a lot of the reasons why that's the case was there to argue against the doom and gloom forecasts that were coming
Mine
out.
was a little less educated guessing than yours. I just when I saw the tactics that were used in the beginning, I said this is not going to be fast. When I saw the row of tanks and a single file line going down a road, I said, yeah, this is going to take a moment because
Oh,
if
and
this is
I just remember the moment, I kept waiting for the tanks to show up in the cities, and I kept waiting for the combined arms. And it took a few months for it to come be clear that the Russians weren't capable of mixing artillery, infantry, and armor together in combined arms, which is something the United States kind of mastered in the 70s and 80s.
well,
And
because they can't do it like they used to, where they'd send in the infantry and then they do the thing you see in the movies. They're like, hit them with artillery, but our soldiers are there. It doesn't matter. Do it anyway. You can't do that anymore. So that took a big.
no, and it took a while to realize. I mean, it took a while to realize just how bad these guys are. And
Yeah.
and I mean, I sound like I'm really down on Russia, but it's like this, like, no, the evidence. This is just this conclusion. This is just where we keep finding out that they're just that bad, and their weapons are just that bad. And like I say, we ought to be taking bets on whether these ships going to Cuba would, or if any of them are going to end up being towed back by that salvage tug.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Cuban Missile Crisis. All right. We're going to end on final thoughts from Harold. You've heard enough from us, me and Dave today. Final thoughts on you, Harold. Do you have anything you want to leave and then land your plane?
Well, again, it's always good to have an open mind, regardless of what's going on in the homeland or abroad. And I think, when we're having these conversations, again, not only having an open mind, but being ready to receive some level of constructive, criticism or constructive debate so that you can learn from what's transpiring. I know a lot of our viewers, some of them are very entrenched in their viewpoint, which is good to a certain extent, but you definitely want to, I hope that they would become more open minded to discussing rather than latching on to some of those buzzwords or trigger words that are out there that kind of creates the separation or that wedge that further divides us than unite us, because we are supposedly the United States of America, not the divided states of America. So it's up to us to either prove it right or prove it wrong.
Obviously, he's never been to Texas. And those of you who love arguing with us through comments, I always comment. If you want to come on the show and debate any of our panelists, then go ahead and please email me. Dave would love nothing more than to debate philosophies with you all out there. It will make his day.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
All right, have a good one, everybody.
Take care.
Deuces.